So I have about 60 slides. That's one per minute if I got 60 minutes. If I could finish at about 25 after, that would be good. Then we would be back on schedule. I'll see what I can do, but then I have to talk faster. So let's see how it goes. I'll put my little timer on now. That'll have consuming time. And I have an alarm that goes at 25 after, I think. Yeah. Okay. So on the left-hand side here, you'll see one of my early contributions to the usability field, the humanized input book. And when we first wrote the book, my co-author, Gerald Weinberg, said, I'll do the references, the literature references. And he said, Tom, there are no literature references. We are first. That's how early we were, 1976. There's the Japanese translation for those of you who prefer Japanese. Okay. On the right-hand side is a book, Competitive Engineering, which I'm going to offer you a free digital copy at the last slide. Okay. By the way, these slides and their location is right now on Twitter and LinkedIn and on my web pages, gilb.com downloads. So you can easily find them even now if you wanted to. Okay, so you see from the title that I'm going to focus on what I call systems engineering. So systems is definitely the major overview topic. You know, look at the big picture, call it what you like. And engineering is my special contribution. In very simple terms, it means instead of using nice sounding words like great usability, we're going to put a number on it, like everybody can learn to do the Apple Watch without any training, or something like that, in less than 10 minutes or something like that. Okay. Here is a summary of the talk. I don't expect you really to absorb it, but you'll notice I use the word engineering and quantified and measured quite a lot of times. So that's the theme. And, but I'll go through these principles one by one and give you a little bit more detail. Yesterday, after Pavel picked us up at the train station, I just told a story from the old days in Poland. And he said, that's a nice story, put it in your talk. So Pavel, this is especially for you. So I checked the date. It is in 1974, I was invited first by the University of Warsaw and then University of Wrocław. And I think I was in Katowice, but I can't prove it. And it's changed out of all recognition, so how would I know? But, and I held courses on software engineering techniques. So I was trying to teach software engineering in Poland to your grandparents. Or something like that. I'd be very interested to know if anybody here has a relative who says, yes, I was there when Tom was holding the lectures. We had a lot of fun. You can check if they were in the business and getting a software engineering technique. The joke was that the term software engineering, which is one of my themes today, had just been invented in 1968 and 1969 at some conferences sponsored by NATO. Remember the Cold War? That other gang there? Okay. I believe Poland is now a member of NATO. How nice. Okay. And, but I knew they had published the proceedings and were giving them away in the West. So I said, would you mind sending a few hundred copies to Warsaw for free? And they did. So I had a bit of fun. I would hand out the copies of proceedings to each participant in my lectures and courses and said, here is a gift from NATO to the Warsaw Pact. This was 1974. And of course, the Polish took it with good humor. You can, if you want more detail, I've given some links to get the original literature. They're discussing things about software engineering and portability and not so much usability. Nobody was talking much about usability in those days. Here is one of the earliest Polish people who I got very involved with. Lech Karnik, forgive me, I always have problems with the pronunciation. And, but he arrived in, let's see, 1978 on my doorstep, and it was raining, and I was out at a shop, so my wife, who was over there, answered the door and said, hello, and he said, hello, I'm Lech. And he said, well, yes, I want to talk to Tom. Yeah, he'll be back in a few minutes, so you come in. And he said he had read my software metrics book from '76, and in it was my home address in Norway. So just getting out of Poland at that time, a big trick, like you have to have enough currency and permissions and God knows what. And but he was one of these very adventurous guys who liked to get out and travel. And it turns out he was trying to implement my ideas, and in connection with his doctoral degree at the Krakow Institute of Mining and Metallurgy, right? Anybody here a graduate of the, yeah, I met a few, yeah. And, okay, so long story short, Lech became like an extra son in the family. Not that I needed any extra, I already had 4. But still, he was good to have and a good friend. And we set him up. The first year, of course, picking potatoes and filling oil cans to earn some money. Okay, but then I realized he was smarter than that, and in fact, later I learned that he'd won the science prize for whole of Poland for young scientists by answering questions like, the year is 2024, 10 p.m., January 24th, describe the pattern of stars in the skies. So he had a good brain. It's a brain that can program without making bugs or debug in his sleep. Okay, so I thought, okay, I'm developing some methods for quantifying things. And I wonder if you would be, like, instead of filling oil cans and picking potatoes, for the same amount of money, because I'm not rich, I'm now contracting out to Poland. It's the first software contract to Poland. I said, I'll pay you as much as you got for the potatoes and the oil can filling, and you will write a tool to automatically quantify qualities like usability. Okay? And you will automatically build a second tool to quantify how good your usability designs are for reaching usability. A robot, an automatic design, automatic requirements. And he did it. It's called the Aspect Engine. He claims he can still, although this was built in Forth on an Apple II. At my home, he claims he can run it on PCs today. And we still have, in fact, he might be just whizzing from Finland to Sweden down to Poland right as we speak. I just had an email from him about 2 days ago. So he's around from Krakow, but he's became a professor in Finland. Anyway, I got great, I assumed all Poles were as smart as he was. So all Poles are geniuses, but, and you're a pretty smart bunch, but he's not easy to compete with. Anyway, we had, he helped one of my sons in enough mathematics that they could pass some exams and things like that. So, but he's always been one of the family. Another silly little Poland story before I get into the serious business, although that was highly related to what I'm going to talk about today. Okay, so you might say the Polish were the first people to build automated tools for my quantification of quality ideas. Okay, yeah, smart people. Other people were just saying, what the hell is that? I don't believe it. But he just said, I'll build the tool and it will work, and it did. Okay. So about 2013, I held a meetup lecture for Agile Warsaw, and in fact, I did one for the architecture group last Wednesday. And they said, Tom, this is interesting, could we learn some more? And I said, well, I'm going to an international conference outside of Warsaw, but I'll be back. I plan to spend all Friday going to wonderful museums and really being a good tourist in Warsaw, which I'd never had time to do. And I love to do that. And we're going to do some of that tomorrow, ending up at the opera with La Bohème in Polish. But I think I can tackle that. Anyway, so I said, I'll tell you what, let's see how agile you are. If you can put together a class somewhere for Friday, I will give up the museums and I will hold a class. And they did that, proving they were agile, so I had to keep my word. And I never have been to the museums yet, although my wife does that on the side when I was out working 2 days in Warsaw, last two days, and then she went to see the wonderful museums and take some photographs, and so one day I will see some museums. But we still have the cup at home. Thank you, Tom, from your fan club in Agile Warsaw. And they gave me another certificate. It was filled with all the pictures of all the museums that I didn't visit because I spent my time with them. And when I held my lecture on Wednesday, I said, was anybody there then? And 2 guys put up their hands. So we're actually at that one-day course we did Agile really quick. Okay, even this course on Wednesday was put together about 3 days' notice, and we had 45 people show up. So I'm quite amazed at the agility of Polish people. Anyway, those were my Polish stories. You all sort of warmed up, you're awake, you know. Now comes the serious business. By the way, I am famous for incredibly bad graphical design of my slides. I'm looking at probably the most critical audience, so just forgive me, you know, see past it. Or if you want, you're welcome to take over my slides and redesign them for me. You know, really, I'd love that. My son does that all the time, so then they get much better. But just try to see the message behind the science. They're too busy, you know, etc. But there is some powerful, useful, deep technology for usability designers here. And that's the important point. If I can talk some of you to going down that path, it'd be great. Okay, so I have some definitions of usability, engineering, and some principles. Usability, let it be there. Engineering, this is actually a paraphrasing of a definition made by a guy called Billy Cohen, University of Austin, Texas, who tried to define engineering. And so I just leave that there for you to read or not to read if you care about definition. And same thing about a principle. The books I'm going to give you contain at least 100 principles. I love to formulate ideas in a little nutshell. So the books are very long, but you only have to read the principles, and they're very short. So you can actually get an 8-page chapter, and it's summarized in 8 words. So the books I'm going to give you, take a look. So if you think there's a lot of stuff to read, don't worry, just read the principle. If you understand that, you're finished, right? It's really a very short book. Okay. Now, principle number 1. These are my 10 principles. I believe that usability can be engineered into systems. Now, that's a different word from the word design, isn't it? Design can be more artistic, okay? I have a mother who was theater and creative, and a wife who is pretty good at painting, and a stepfather who was a great artist. So I'm brought up in the arts, but I was more an engineer in my past life or something, I don't know. And by engineering, it means very systematic, logical thinking driven by numbers, as we all envisage engineers doing. It doesn't mean intuitive, but engineers, of course, use intuition, but they maybe confirm their intuition by measurement, which is quite different. Okay, as opposed to just use intuition, throw it in, and hope for the best, and don't worry. Okay, so I believe we can architect, meaning design the big picture, and that means design all kinds of usability for all kinds of purposes, together with all other considerations such as security. Usability and security are always battling one another. If you make it incredibly user-friendly, it's also incredibly hacker-friendly. So we always have that conflict. So one of the problems here is this is about the big picture. We have to do the best we can for usability, but we have to balance with other needs that are in competition, such as performance and cost and security, are always in conflict with what we're doing. So we have to look at the whole picture and balance so we get enough security, but not too much. I mean, these passwords here are an example of ridiculously too much. I mean, what's going to happen? Is the whole of the Polish economy going to die if we get one hacker in here who uses a bit of Wi-Fi time? That's ridiculous. But that's security gone mad. It's not user-friendly. I love it. I have a friend of mine who has an app I'll be showing you later. And the password to get in there, you know what it is? Password. I love it. Way to go. You got to, I mean, it has to be if you're getting into the Polish banking and steal everything from the nation, maybe you need more than the best possible password. But that's another matter. Okay. So design means that the user-friendliness is not an accident, not to mention a bad accident. And it's not just throwing in ideas and hoping it'll work method, which I think a lot of people use. It's very systematic. So we want so much usability, and here's a design to get part of the way, here's another design to get part of the way. Now we're there. Okay, we can measure we've got to the level of usability we want. That's what I mean by systematic engineering. Okay. Now, don't worry too much about this, but I've taken the term engineering and decomposed it into various sidelines. This is from one of the books called Competitive Engineering. And all those concepts are systematically defined. But you can maybe place engineering in the big picture there. This is also a lot of detail. Don't worry too much. I'm just trying to say I'm incredibly focused on really good, clear, usability requirements, quantified. I'm going to show you many real examples of them shortly, okay? And then once the requirements are in place, there's this act of design, which I'm calling design engineering. But engineering starts with the quantified requirements. That's the input to the engineer or architect or designer, right? And then the design means finding technical solutions so that we reach those levels, those numeric levels we've decided to get. So these are my, and you'll find massive detailed information on these two processes in the two books I'm going to give you, okay? If you want to go deeper. Okay, principle 2. Usability itself, as Pavel indicated, but was skeptical too, can be quantified, okay? Now, in fact, one of the most frequently asked questions I get when I address a general software IT audience, and I say, you can quantify any quality, okay, is they say, yeah, but can you quantify usability? It's incredibly how frequent just that question is. They don't know how to do it, okay? By the way, if you want to have a bit of fun, I haven't referenced it here. If you just write my name and then TEDx, you get a 18-minute video of me explaining how to quantify love. I got your attention now, right? You'll even see a photograph of my sister and my wife in the background smiling as I tease them. Okay. Okay, so what I'm saying is usability ideas can be expressed with numbers. I'm going to show you a lot of examples of doing it without numbers and doing it with numbers. And I'm afraid without is the most common. And I think that may be a reason you're not getting the good usability you could potentially get if you used numbers. I mean, this is just a way to advance your career and go a little bit further and be better than the next usability expert. You say, I'm a UX engineer. How's that? Sounds better than, you know, I'm an artist. But I love art, okay? And a lot of the best art, like from Leonardo da Vinci, is done by an engineer. Is there a connection? Well, okay. So now the moment you are doing this quantification, point 2 here, the moment you use numbers, you have entered engineering territory. You've entered logical territory. It's no longer, you know, intuition and feelings and all those wonderful things, and you're more likely to succeed. By the way, numbers stimulate creativity. Okay? Take a number for how good a system is, and they're like your competitor, and then just arbitrarily take a 10 times higher number and say, find a solution for getting there. Boy, do you have to be creative. You have to go where no man has gone before you, right? So I have a paper called Practical Purposeful Creativity. You'll find on my website. You can probably Google it too, right? Which argues that numbers, so a lot of people say, well, that destroys creativity. Not at all. It stimulates it like you wouldn't believe, and I'm going to give you some real examples of that happening in industry. Okay, so you want to stimulate your creative juices, you need to put numbers that are out of reach, seemingly impossible. And people will rise to the challenge. They won't always get to some ridiculously high number, but they might get a lot further than they've gotten if you just said, do your very best. The do your very best means, yeah, what I know. See, 10 times more than what you know forces you to learn new things, find out new things, and measure whether you're getting there. And say, I'm not getting there, therefore I must have still more new ideas. So the flow of new ideas comes into the organization, into the individual. Okay, and that's one form of creativity. Okay, now a little example. So this is from, this is actually Nokia mobile phone systems at their height when they were world powerful little Swedish company. And they had a project to build a military mobile phone, right? And I had a group of about 50 people in London, and I said, let's have a bit of fun. Why don't you just tell me, why don't you write down the usability specifications for how soldier-friendly, see, your telephone's going to be. So, well, here's the first one. Now, the first thing you'll notice about all of these is there are no numbers. There is no attempt to put a number into these. It should be obvious that at least some of them, like not too heavy, you could put a weight like how many kilos. This is in the days when phones could be quite heavy, especially military phones, right? And you have to carry them together with everything else, right? Not like my little Apple Watch 3, which is pretty light and is an independent phone. Easy to use. What does that mean? Not too heavy. What does that mean? Always working. What does that mean? Okay, so what do you have? You have a lot of highly ambiguous, unclear statements, which are more, it gives the illusion that you're giving a specification, but you are not. You might as well spout random words from a random word generator. There's a bullshit generator on the web. Go get that. You might as well spout the random bullshit generator, and it'd be just as good or just as bad, because it's not challenging us to do any specific thing whatsoever, and nobody can check that we ever did it. But here's where it gets fun. I captured about 50 people or small groups doing it. So here's the second one. Notice the difference between the first one and the second one? They're different. They don't agree. Same company, same project, same soldiers, and everybody's got, oh, wow, there's a 5 there. They actually understand the concept of a number, even though they don't apply it where they should. Here's the third one. No numbers. Different set of things expressed different ways. Same project, same company. Look at this one. This is a pattern here, right? These are engineers. These are smart people. This is a good company. They're top of the business of mobile telephones. But they cannot articulate usability more than management bullshit words. By the way, how many people here are engineers of some kind, have an engineering education? So that's about half of you. Okay. The others might not get anything out of my talk, ultimately. But I have great hope for the engineers. Okay. By the way, I'm an amateur engineer. I do not have a degree in engineering. If I did anything, I did sociology, by the way, just to indicate, human things at university. But I'm a self-taught engineer because it became necessary to learn engineering to do my job within software. And since there weren't any good methods, I actually had to invent methods because nobody was, at any level, was teaching me the kind of methods I'm going to teach you. So I'm a methods inventor. But then my father was an inventor too. He had 100 patents. So inventing is in my genes, I guess. Okay. Nice and short anyway, but equally meaningless, right? Nice and short. So I love this one. Easy to handle if with clothes on. Implication. If soldier is naked, it can be difficult to handle if you like. I don't know. People write the damnedest things. That's not the only funny one here. There's more. These are just everybody's take. Yeah? Now, this is my favorite one. The soldiers can use the phone with one hand in the dark. Let your imagination run rampant what they're doing with the other hand. Of course, the official answer, they're aiming a gun. But they may be doing something else in the dark. Oh, I love it. But very practical, but they're not very specific and clear. They're not really, none of these are testable. You cannot test when the phone is delivered that anything was achieved. That's not good enough. Requirements must ultimately be testable to be meaningful. Okay. So that's sort of the problem there. I'll show you a few more such things, but here. Now, principle 3, usability requirements can be quantified. I mean, I start off all quality requirements, security, maintainability, you name it, can be quantified. In the books I'm giving you, there are massive examples of how to do it. Okay? By the way, the easiest way to learn to quantify anything, including usability? Pull out your phone now. Get your Google up there right now. This is our little demo, if you want to. You don't have to. I know you don't want to. But and Google usability space metrics. And you know what will happen? You'll get somewhere between 100,000 and 1 million hits, of which the first 3 on the first page are fantastically well thought out expert knowledge of how to quantify them. Okay? So forget Gilb, but think of all those good people out there, renowned usability experts that have published how to quantify it. Okay? So it's amazing that people are in denial. Well, you can't quantify usability. I said, did you ever try to Google it? No, because you can't do it. Well, surprise, you're wrong. Okay, by the way, the interesting thing about this little trick is it applies to all other qualities you can imagine, including sub-qualities of usability. Write the name, space, metrics, and you will find people showing you how to quantify, how to measure, and things like that. I just turned you into an instant engineer. Yeah, Quite amazing how powerful it is. It's all out there. There's no such thing as a quality that you cannot find good answers to immediately. It's all out there. We've tried everything and nobody's found an exception yet. You can try. Okay? Try to yourself something you think is really difficult to quantify, and then Google it, and I promise you, first page, first 2 or 3 have got very deep, professional, experiential answers. Okay? So just accept it. Everything, and when you're ready, everything can be quantified. Okay. Okay. Now, here's an example. This is one of my favorite clients in Norway, and they're all engineers, but they build a product which is basically it's Gallup surveys about products. Okay. And they had a problem because they had spent 8 years building their product, and they got half of the world's market. Not bad for a little Norwegian startup company. Okay. But it took, when they handed the product over to the marketing directors who were going to use it, they had to go on a 1-week course to use it at all. Okay? Now, user-friendly is like 0. Imagine if I walked in the Apple shop and said, I want an Apple Watch. You have to go on a 1-week course, Gilb, first. And you have to pay for it. You have to pass the exam. Then we'll let you have the watch. You notice Apple doesn't do that for some strange reason? Okay? But these guys did, and they got away with it. But along came Boeing and Microsoft, 2 of their big customers, and said, you know what, we would like to use your tool, not just in marketing, but all projects in the whole of Boeing and Microsoft to get a survey. But there's no way we're going to send our project managers through your stupid 1-week course. So when you've gotten down to 0 weeks course, tell us and we'll order 1,000 more widgets from you. So guess if the marketing manager confirmed it was very interested in usability at that point, like multiply your sales time 1,000. So I mean, it was that little carrot dang. So they decided they were going to go for it, and we were interfacing with them as early as 2003, and we said, all you do is you need to quantify the different, there are several several usability aspects. You need to quantify them all to have a clear idea of what you want and deliver that clear idea to your staff, your programmers, your testers. And they did that, and here's a simple little example of doing it. They actually took usability and divided it into 10 different aspects of usability. You'll see some in the following slides. So usability is not a one-dimensional thing. In fact, very few high-level, very important things like security or usability are one-dimensional, have one scale. Typically, you need to, love is a many-splendored thing. Yeah? Or put another way, when a friend of mine got very annoyed that I suggested you could quantify love, and he was a true Christian, had a degree in divinity, he walked out and got angry at me as though I had insulted the Lord and Jesus. He came back 6 weeks later and said, Tom, in Corinthians, book 1, it's got exactly what you taught me. Love, agape, divided into about 10 things, like suffereth long, is the first one. Can you quantify that? Okay, I met my wife in 1958. She's still here. She has suffered me long. I know that means she loves me to some degree, and there are a few other things in there too. There was this idea of decomposition of complex qualities into their factors is old as the hills, as old as Corinthians in the Bible, and probably much older than that. Not a new idea. That's the first big trick we learned in trying to quantify usability, is it must be decomposed. Now, I don't have slides on it, but I'm going to throw in a short IBM story about doing this. When the PC was just about to come out at IBM, the CEO got a brainstorm. He said, we have to be far more user-friendly for this PC thing, which will be sold to grandmothers and children, than we ever had to be for those big mainframes that people like Gilb kept running, no matter how, even they had to read the binary lights on the computer to figure out what was inside in the program. Grandmother isn't going to do that. So he said, we have to master usability. This is about 1980. The CEO, okay? And because I'd written that humanized input book, IBM took contact and said, you've written a book about the subject, help us out. And I said, my book won't help you. They said, why not? They said, because you are driven and motivated to do certain things like be finished on a deadline, have a certain execution speed of a module, have certain space usage, not have too many bugs. You know, and that consumes all and you do not have a requirement or a goal to be so-and-so user-friendly at all. So what will happen is you'll do all these other things that are, you know, you can manage what you measure parameters, and you will ignore anything you might have learned from me of how to make a more usable system. And they said, what are you saying, Gil? I said, you have to have a usability measure, which is as powerful as a deadline. And if you haven't met the right level of usability, you can't meet the deadline. Tough shit. No question of saying, the deadline's here, so let's push out whatever bad usability we have. Have you ever been near a situation like that? You know you should do it much better, but that deadline is there. You feel ashamed. No, usability has to beat deadline in very simple terms. Okay, but you have to have a clear idea. So I said, what are you saying? I said, you have to quantify usability. And they said, okay, we understand that. IBM's a smart company. They understand metrics to drive things like sales quotas very well. So they said, we understand what you're saying. We just have one problem, Tom. We don't know how to quantify usability. And I was talking to the two best people, John Bennett and Max Wilson from San Jose. Those were their top guys. Said, we don't know how to do it. I said, guess what, guys? I don't know either. But so what? Let's figure it out. It's on the CEO's agenda for a huge corporation. It will determine whether they master the market of PC or get a lot of competition from Apple here. So let's just do it. For 6 months, we couldn't do it. We kept on saying, well, it's obvious how long time it takes to learn. Oh, wait a minute. After they've learned it, they still have things like error rates. Okay, we'll measure the error rates. Nobody had learned. It took us a while for Max Wilson walked in one day to our meeting room after 6 months and he said, Eureka. You all know what that means, right? Yeah. I said, what is it, Mac? He said, the answer is the set, the multiple aspects of usability. There is no one usability measure in practice. That was a little bit of an insight. But that's the same thing as in Corinthians about dividing love up. That's the same thing René Descartes was talking about with Cartesian analysis in the 1600s. Nothing new. That, divide and conquer. Tough, complex problem, divide it up. Okay? Anyway, so in this case at Confirm It, they had 10 different ones. We'll see some samples of them. Now here's another case. This is Ericsson of Sweden, and they're building what I call a spy plane, but they said it's not a spy plane. It's an observation device. Anyway. And we started off, I tried to get quantified all critical objectives for a project on the first day of the project, the Monday. Okay, so we're there on the Monday. And I started off and said, what is the most critical objective for this product? It was really the software of the spy plane, okay, Erieye. And they said, that's easy, usability. I said, why? He said, because the whole thing is about reducing the operational cost compared to an AWACS spy plane by a factor of 10 or 100 to 1. There's only one way that's going to happen. The two people on board the spy plane, Erieye, are going to have to do the work, each one of them, for 10 AWACS operators. They have to be 10, there's no hardware that does that for you. It's going to happen with software, and we build the software. We've got to do something radically much better with usability than the Americans ever did with AWACS. So usability is the number one thing. I said, fine. Well, at IBM, we cracked this problem, and I've got a list of all the things we did. We can just copy out of the book, cut and paste. We got to the end of about 8 quality things, and then they said 2 magic words, which are up here, intuitiveness and intelligibility. And I said, we never did that before. And they said, well, they're very important. You better believe us. Okay, so we sat down that Monday at about 11 a.m. before lunch, and we cracked how to quantify intelligibility and usability. To our knowledge, nobody had ever done it before. Now, we didn't have an internet to look at to find out if anybody had ever done it before, but we didn't know anybody did, and we didn't know any books and things like that. This, by the way, is a simplification in my planning language, Planguage, which basically says if you want to quantify it, define a scale of measure, and then put a number on it. Okay, the ambition level at the top there, the gist, is sort of the management bullshit level, which we're trying to translate in something more finite. Here is a little bit more detail. Like, here is the intuitiveness. Now, the thing you want to stare at, although it's admittedly a whole 6 lines long, is the scale. But that is the real scale of measure we worked out between us and said, that is a good way of measuring the intuitiveness of a spy plane. Okay? And we put some numbers on it. Here's the intelligibility. Again, what you want to stare at is the scale. That's the key. It turns out good people determined to do it and not giving up like I'm told that Poles do, right? And finding you can't do it. Isn't that somebody say that recently in this room an hour ago? I didn't say it. I'm not saying anything. I think Poles are fantastic. They just did it. We just sat down and did it together. This is exactly what we did. Okay. Long story short, they went on to use this method for the whole plane and had good things to say about it. And you can actually look on the web for Erieye and see the operational plane, and that's the project manager saying this is successful business. Principle 4. You can the design and architecture. In other words, the methods of being user-friendly can themselves be quantified. There are two kinds of quantification. One is called an estimate. How good is this design for my usability? To what degree will it reduce the number of faults that people do? Okay? And let's just say it reduced by 50%. Okay, there's another measure, there's another quantification. It's we have now implemented this and we have measured and it only reduces by 20%. Okay, those are two, in other words, there's an estimate and a measure of how good any usability UX design is in relation to a specific requirement like the fault rate. Okay, now that's useful because that can help you pick the right technology to do the job at the lowest cost, and that's very practical. That's very different from just throwing the methods in and hoping it'll sort of work and not be too much to complain about. And I'll show you where we go with that. Okay, so I'm saying not only can you quantify the usability idea of how good you want to be, but you can quantify UX design ideas and architectures themselves on multiple usability definitions simultaneously. By the way, together with the other dimensions like security, performance, and cost for your usability things. So you get the overall big picture. That's one of the themes of this conference again, isn't it? Of how your usability design fits in with the budget. You can't steal 99% of the whole budget just for usability. Okay? And everything else. So here's an example of doing it. This is from the US Department of Defense, Persinscom. And what it is called an impact estimation table. Okay, you'll find this is a powerful tool. In fact, sometimes when people say, Tom, what do you do? I say, I'm a toolsmith. I build tools. I've got hundreds of them. Okay, and maybe you've picked up a tool or two like usability metrics, Google. That's a little tool, amazing tool. It's amazing that people haven't thought of it before or don't largely do it. They just give up and say it can't be quantified. But here's another tool. This tool is a table that enables us to take any set of designs for any reason whatsoever, including some security designs, some usability designs, right? Big picture, everything, not just usability, sub-optimized, and rate them by some sort of numeric impact, but let's keep it simple. 0 means no impact, 100% means delivered to the level we want on time. That's the meaning of those numbers. You can figure out, so what does 50% mean? Well, I guess it's halfway to the goal by the deadline, which is a little bit not good enough. Okay. What does minus 50 mean? Okay. Anyway, so I've just outlined the usability column where we've got a usability requirement which is quantified. We've got different designs and we've got some ratings there. But with the other things are rated too. This is the big picture tool. But you can go even further. You can say that's the big overall picture for the project and all the qualities and all the costs and all the architecture. But you can take and do a sub-level of this, and you can decompose any of the one technologies there, and you can decompose the usability into like 10 different things. You have another 10 by 10 table at a more detailed level of concern, which is your specialist concern as usability people. Okay? Now, I normally use at least one day to teach how to do that table. On the 13th of October in Warsaw, we did it. Okay? So don't expect to understand everything in that table. The books I'm going to give you will explain it, right? Anybody here from future? We get it right? Future processing? Okay, I'll be visiting you Monday and Wednesday, and we can talk in more depth about those things. Okay, but the basic idea is terribly simple. You somehow rate your designs with regard to your requirements and your costs. And the things that get the best ratings should be chosen or prioritized or done first. And you're going to have to do them incrementally, agile, and measure what happens. And if you get disappointed, your usability technology is not working, is it? What do you do then? Stick with it, you dump it, you modify it, you find better technology. What does that mean? It means that usability design is a continuous process that has to be verified by measurement, and bad usability designs have to be dumped. Is that clear? That's normal, really smart engineering, it's called. Okay? But the point is the measures tell you you have to dump it. Yeah, it works, but it only works 30%. We have one more week and we've got to get to 100% or we're dead meat. So the fact that it works a little bit is just not good enough. 30% ain't anywhere near that. And we only got 1 week to find what do we do about the other 70%. That's my 1825 alarm. I love to stop on time. I even think it is an insult to the following speakers to not stop on time. So, actually I've gotten all my important points across. I'm going to leave you with this. When I was 25, believe it or not, I was. I'm shortly to be 77, and I intend to spend another 25 years and teach your grandchildren. Mark my words. Yeah, and you'll talk to your grandchildren. This guy Gilb popped up. He's 125. Would you believe it? But he's lecturing on this quantification of usability still. I'll be here. But when I was 25, this was published in a newspaper in Oslo. And it basically said, if you think you know something about a subject, try to put a number on it. If you think you know something about usability, try to put a number on it. If you cannot, admit you don't know shit. I just made up a poem. I leave you with that poetic thought. I'm going to stop on principle. You've got the access to the rest of the slides, right? Okay. We're back on schedule.